Good evening, everyone. You are currently listening to a career advice webinar by the Royal Australian Chemical Institute, the professional association for chemists in Australia. I am Dr. Andrew Duggan, Head of Marketing for Shimadzu Oceania. Our webinar tonight aims to explore career opportunities in a trio of sectors: industry, government, and academia. Our panelists tonight are all professionals in these areas. And drawing from our experiences, we will be discussing the types and range of opportunities available. We will be giving some insight into what a career in these sectors might look like, including the advantages and disadvantages of each sector, as well as key career pressures. We absolutely welcome you to ask questions using the Q&A tab. And we'll attempt to answer some of those for you. Before we start this evening's panel session, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are all meeting around Australia. We recognize the elders, past, present, and emerging, and also recognize their contributions as Australia's first scientists and engineers. Building a healthy and safe community, what they've done and what we can still learn from their ways. We would also like to thank the 2021 sponsors of RACI's Careers Development Program, DCS Technical, Envirolab, and Laboratory Credit Union. And we would really like to thank our panelists this evening. You're going to hear much more from them. We've got Dr. David Lynn, Assistant Director for Australian Pesticides and Veterinary Medicines Authority. We've also got Dr. Christina Lamb, who's a researcher at Griffith Uni, and Dr. Nicole Tasker, who is Associate Clinical Project Manager at the Nucleus Network. So just to begin with, we're going to ask our panelists if they could give us a quick 2-minute intro about themselves, their role and organization, and what sectors they've worked in. I know David's well prepared, so David, let's start with you.
Thank you. Yes, I prepared a few slides, so I can give a systematic introduction. That's what I like, and as much information as possible. Now I'm going to share my screen. First, I introduce myself, and then brief the APVMA where I work. I also give a general discussion about the APS because there's a job opportunities and it's open to everyone. I'm trained by the chemist, although I diverted in the pharmacy in my post PhD and the research area. And also I get the diploma. So that's my training background. I still regard myself as a chemist. I joined the ICI in 1991 and learned so much from the society. Now, after my after my PhD, I got 3 years postdoc in the QUT. Then I moved to industry. I thought that the academia might be too hard, industry. So I take up a QA manager and I do enjoy the work, but still I miss the academia. So there's opportunity in the Southern Cross. There's a new school of complementary medicine established. So I took up a research fellow and then running a natural product laboratory. And then after 7 years, I moved to Hawaii and then continue my research work. As assistant professor in the biochemistry area teaching. Then I back to the UC, University of Canberra, and then to start to help teaching the new program is Master of Pharmacy, a graduate entry, 2 years pharmacy degree to train the pharmacists. After 5 years, during that time, the story is I do some consultants for the regulatory work, and then I become familiar with the TGA and the APVMA. So, and I thought that's also a good, secure, opportunity for me, and then using my expertise in the science area. So I moved to the TGA for a couple of years, and then last 10 years in the APVMA, and I enjoy up to now. So in the 10 years, in APVMA, I learned so many things, a lot of soft skills, just like project management, leadership, collaboration, teamwork, understanding the registration process, decision. That's more about application, approving the agriculture, pesticides, and the vet medicine. Working in with multiple stakeholders, and also in general understand how the government function, administration of a lot of programs and deliver the service. And of course, related to me is a regulatory service. Now, my current work is more, again, using my expertise in chemistry area. So we accept the chemistry data, manufacturing, quality control, etc., from the applicant for the approval of the active and registration of products. So I assess the data and then prepare a report, and then prepare also a decision document for delegate for sign off. So during this process, we work a team of the scientists. There are different sections. There's a case manager handling application process, toxicology looking at toxicology part, and then there's a delegate approval, and also the applicant, engage with applicant and including consultants. Yeah. There's also other section in compliance that I support it in the chemistry area, chemical reconsideration, chemical review. After the in the market for several years, in new information and new consideration. So that again need a chemistry input. And then we set the APV standard for each active, and they're looking at guideline for industry, and also we update it from time to time. So you can see it's quite science-based work, and I do enjoy it very broadly, and then they interact with multiple teams. But in general, we support the agriculture and chemical, veterinary chemical industry, and also the agriculture, Australian agriculture, which provides the food, and yeah. And in a higher level, our work also contribute to protect the human, animal health, and the environment, because if you want to market the chemical in Australia, you need to be registered first. Now, APM was developed in 1993, so it's not a long history. So there's an Administration Act in 1992 by the government. We have currently 180 people. So compared to TGA, we're much smaller. And then recently, we relocated to Armidale in a regional city. So 140 there. In Canberra, still we have 40 people, including me. Mainly a regular scientist. Because it's hard to recruit the people in a way. So they want to keep us to continue the work. Now, there's another act called Agricultural Veterinary Chemical Act 1994, and they set how we approve the product and the active. So there's safety, that's general, that include the chemistry, manufacturing, that where I'm in, health, that's toxicity, environment, and residue. That's very unique to the agriculture and veterinary medicine, yeah, not in the pharmaceutical area. And the other thing, efficacy, of course, yeah, and tray also unique. The tray means the residue in the crops, and that involves the chemistry to labeling. In other area, AP also regulates the legislation part in terms of use. After the sale, how to use it, that's a state and the territory responsibility, right? But we do conduct the post-marketing compliance. So we monitor the activity in the market. If it's unregistered, we will just hold them accountable. And then there's the legislation instrument to make them accountable, including the fine and even the penalty and the criminal charge. So for the veterinary medicine, it's under the GMP. So there's a GMP licensing and auditing function, and of course, reconsideration or chemical review. That's another function. Now, there's other area I already touched. Okay, so APV do involve a lot of chemistry work. So in the, and in fact, because it's a chemical, so you need to manufacture it. So it's a chemistry and manufacturing data, including the the manufacturing, process control, characterization, so the detection, declaration, composition, analytical method, and the method validation. These are all chemistry related. And then for a product, the formulation process, and then batch analysis, analytical stability testing, shelf life, etc. So, and this information is in the data form, and then we produce in the assessment report based on the legislation statutory criteria, safety and efficacy, etc. And then once it meet all the statutory criteria, the delegate will approve it. Now, other area I mentioned already, that residue also involve chemistry, health or toxicity, environment assessment. They also, there's a chemist working there as well. Well, they originally trained by chemists, but then turned into the toxicologist. Compliance section, chemical review, and GMP audit. They all employ the chemist. Now, finally, I want to talk about general. So that's about APVMA and myself. I want to general and give you a picture about APS6, about APS sector. Now, there's a slogan, or that's not much popular. 20 years ago, very popular. They say one APS career, thousands of opportunities, right? Because I think there's over 100 agencies something under the APS. So they employ large, thousands of the people. So the opportunities are open to everyone. Now, in the area that I'm familiar with APVMA, I regard it as an employer of choice. It's really a very nice working environment. Probably most of the government agency working, working environment is good because they are bound by the APS code of conduct. Yeah. So, and then I'm able to using my expertise. That's most important. Every day I use my regular science skills that include not just my technical knowledge, chemistry, toxicology, and biotechnology, but also expanded to the government administrative law, and then regular service delivery. Now, I just want to briefly mention there's several work levels here. What probably you have heard of it. So APS level 1 to 6. 1 is the lowest and 6 is the highest in the APS level. And then you have the executive level 1 to 2. And then there's the SDS, there's the senior executive service. That's much higher one. So that's like the program directors. So in the section level is the EO 1 to 2. And then the technical staff, project officer is APS 1 to 6. Now, I want to summarize the 5 areas you can consider broadly for all the thousands of jobs. Service delivery, that's the government main function, and including regular service like APVMA, very important. Program and project management, yeah, the many. Policy setting, regulatory function, professional technical function, that's the last. So it's the last in technical expertise. So there's a lot of soft skills there. Yeah. The other thing is when they advertise the job, the selection criteria is very general. Here is what they say. So there's 5 areas they say shape or support the strategic thinking. That's selection criteria 1. How to address it? I give one example. There's many more. If you look at APSC website, there's much more description here. So, and the second one, achieve result, well, that's understandable. Cultivate a productive working relationship and exemplary personal drive and the integrity, and communicate with influence. Well, these soft skills, communication. So I think that's all from me. Sorry, I've taken about 10 minutes, over 10 minutes.
David, that was fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
If anybody does have questions, just remember that there is a tab at the bottom of the screen where we would love to hear your questions. If you type them in there, we'll get to see them and answer them if possible. Now, David, if I could just ask you, you look super enthusiastic about your position. What actually drew you to your field?
Well, first is the veterinary medicine, pesticide, and that's my technical expertise, chemistry. So first is the chemistry that I use every day. And then the other thing is the training. It's really, well, for the law, for the regulation, I don't know much. So I start from the beginning, but they provide all the training on the job. And even if you study leave, they will support you, relevant to your job. And of
Fantastic.
course, yeah, the secure.
Happy to train you.
Yeah, they will train you. Yeah, that's right. So the best one, for the graduate program is the best entry. But we don't offer all the time. I mean, in the last 3 years, we do offer because of relocation to the Armidale. So we do, recruit 70 to 80% new staff, because many people didn't want to relocate to Armidale. So I think about 10% people moving there. Yeah. So they have to recruit as much people, including using the graduate program. And of course, it's a very friendly, very supportive working environment. Yeah.
So David, you definitely recommend your working environment there.
Yeah. It's like a big family, particularly for APP and TGA. I also work in TGA. TGA is much bigger. They are not that sort of like a big family, but for us, it's like a really big family. We support each other, and there's a very active social and welfare committee. They do all the functions, and we do enjoy that. And that's very important to to work with the people and learn your skills. Yeah. So that's all volunteer, of course, in addition to your work.
That's really good to hear. David, thank you so much for that.
My pleasure.
Nicole, if I could pick on you, please. We would love to hear a little bit about you, just your background and what you're doing.
Thank you, Andrew. Good evening, everyone. Well, my background is that I went to Griffith University on the Gold Coast and I did a Bachelor of Pharmaceutical Science followed by a Masters of Pharmacy. I then went on to do my honours in chemistry at the Institute of Glycomics. I spent the next year registering as a pharmacist in the Melbourne private hospital sector. And this was a very good experience, but it led me to come to the realisation that I didn't want to pursue a career in pharmacy. When I was going through university, I was under the illusion that the pharmacist would be directly involved in the prescribing decisions of the physician. However, in the private sector, it was probably a little bit more commercially driven. It was more about pumping out the script numbers rather than passing on your therapeutic knowledge to the patient. However, in retrospect, I do see there's many fields in pharmacy, and I may have prematurely left, but I've now enjoyed the career I am in now. Following a few years of pharmacy work, I then went in to do my PhD at the Walter and Eliza Hall Institute of Medical Research in Melbourne. That's affiliated with the University of Melbourne, where I did a degree in glycobiochemistry. And this was a very steep learning curve because my degree was in pharmacy, but my PhD was in chemistry. I remember attending the honours, sitting in the back of the honours lecture, just trying to learn chemistry from the beginning. But I made it through. But through my PhD, I did realise that I missed that patient-facing aspect of pharmacy. So I thoroughly enjoyed science and being on the forefront of medical advancement, but it was that patient-facing interaction that I missed, and that immediate gratification you get from when patients thank you and value your information. So I went into clinical research, which pharmacy sells the drugs, chemistry makes the drugs. I thought halfway in between is clinical trials where we test the drugs. And my first role was a clinical research coordinator or clinical trial coordinator at the University of Sunshine Coast. This was both phase 2 and 3. We did some very exciting trials, including a universal flu vaccine, which was a genetically modified organism. And because of my pharmacy training, I actually got to do the stabbing or the immunising. And I then went on to ICON Cancer Centre as a clinical research coordinator in phase 1 oncology trials. And this was very exciting because we were potentially, and at times, the first to dose a human with a new medication or investigational product, we call it. However, this came with the emotional burden of having the oncology participants progress before your eyes, because the time they came to a clinical trial, they were very far through their cancer journey. So we unfortunately would only have them for a brief period of time. And I thought, to take that emotional burden away, I'll go into project management, where I'm still actively involved in clinical trials, but more from an oversight level as a project manager. Additionally, when I was a clinical research coordinator, I would look at my superiors and see that they were not patient-facing. So it was going to, down the track, I would have left the patient-facing side of clinical trials, and this was just my next step towards that career trajectory.
Wonderful. Nicole, thank you so much for that. You're in a fantastic position in that you're maybe just a few years older than most of the people listening today, and you've gone through some challenges. You found your way to where you are currently. Maybe you could just highlight a couple of those challenges. What are you facing today, and what did you face yesterday?
Yes, so I'm about 2.5 years out of my PhD. That time absolutely flies by. And as you will probably experience, the biggest challenge coming out of your PhD is unemployment. I was titled as overqualified and underexperienced, and that was very difficult to get away from that reputation. I had to apply for jobs widely and really sell myself on the cover letter that I wasn't a flight risk. I wasn't actively using them as a stepping stone or a fill in the blank until I got the next postdoc, that I was actually actively pursuing the pharmaceutical industry. Additionally, leaving chemistry behind and going into clinical research, I needed to then do additional training. And it does feel like, and I am on my third career path, so it has just been a continuous cycle of learning. For most of us that do a PhD, we are dedicated to lifelong learning, so that is the kind of character traits we hold. So the challenges would just be that finding that initial foot in the door, because they all want experience, and then that steep learning curve when you do.
That's really good. Now, how did you conquer those challenges? Did you, I'm just thinking, you were applying for jobs. How did you go about that? Was it just through LinkedIn and Seek? Did you actually have a contact or two that you could rely on?
So it's very hard to sell yourself to an employer if you say, well, I've been interested in this career path for a long time, but you can't prove it. So during my PhD, I actively did work experience at the Royal Melbourne Hospital in their neurology department in a clinical trial. And although it was this office-based mundane task that I was doing, it at least allowed me to observe what clinical trial coordinators did and whether that would be a path that I was interested in. And then I also did a clinical trial, what would you call it? The Good Clinical Practice Training through RACI Australia. And that was essentially online learning and modules, and it would have eventuated in an internship if I stayed in Melbourne in the clinical research industry, not on the site side, but it can also be on the pharmaceutical or contract research organisation side. So then when I came to Brisbane, I could actively show that I was pursuing this career path, yet I still faced 3 to 4 months unemployment. And it wasn't until I got in contact with someone through LinkedIn, from a referral of LinkedIn, that I said, I hear you've just started up a clinical trial unit and you may be expanding. I was brought on as just more of an assistant at first in a casual position. And this was very, difficult. Straight out of a PhD, you feel like, oh, well, I've got the doctor before my name. I should be able to walk into any job. But you have to put your pride aside. I went in as an assistant on a casual contract because I was going to be at the right place at the right time for when those contracts did come through.
Excellent, thank you. So if I could paraphrase, you gave a lot of yourself and you did some really specific training that might get you a position, and you also did some networking.
Yes.
Wonderful, that's brilliant to hear, thank you. Nicole, we'll definitely come back to you, but we've got Christina sitting there as well. and I'd love to hear a little bit about Christina. Maybe you could give us just a brief overview of yourself, who you work for, and how you got there.
Yeah, no worries. So my name's Christina Lamb. I have a PhD in physical chemistry. The path to getting where I am, I saw on the sheets that I am listed as Griffith University, and I've just changed this week. I'm now at the Australian Nuclear Science and Technology Organisation. So the path to where I am now, which is slightly different to where I was 2 weeks ago, has been interesting for me. And the main thing that I did, and one of the key things about being in academia and being in research, is that I followed my passion and followed things that I was interested in. And by doing that, that led me to be passionate and engaged and interested and do things outside of the box and get the attention of the people above who are interested in people who are self-starters and who go and figure things out for themselves, which gave me the opportunities to do an honours project, to do a PhD. And then I got my first postdoc position was at CSIRO. It was a 3-year position in Brisbane working on ammonia to hydrogen for energy. And then I did 18 months at Griffith University on hydrogen energy as well. And now I'm at ANSTO at the Australian Synchrotron in Melbourne. And we're working on building a new beamline for doing mainly, one of the big applications will be renewable energy development, renewable energy technology development. So yeah, the path through there has been interesting. I don't know what else I should say about myself.
Christina, that was fantastic. Thank you. But very good to hear that you've got yourself a position at ANSTO. So congratulations on that. Wow, great place to be working.
Thank you. It is. Oh, sorry.
I'd love to ask you more about that, but I guess it's still early days.
I know quite a lot about it, and I guess I should expand on that more. Just briefly, so in my PhD, I did a lot of work at the Australian Synchrotron. So when it came for me to apply for a job at the Australian Synchrotron, I could list all of this experience I had in the organisation. And even this has been my first week, and I keep seeing people that they come past my office and go, "Oh, you work here now." It's like, yeah, just like the next level. I liked it so much I stayed.
Okay, look, that's fantastic. Now, if you've already worked there, maybe you can answer my next question. What does a typical day look like there?
So a day at the Australian Synchrotron is quite different to a day as a researcher, because even though you are doing research, what you do largely is instrument management and maintenance, and train other people to use your instruments. So usually as a researcher, or say at Griffith University, I was using my own instruments and doing my own experiments and producing my own data. At the Australian Synchrotron, you help other people to do that and kind of guide them through the whole process. So you're in a lot of ways kind of the expert at the particular technique and the particular instrument you're using. Because all of these facilities and instruments are so expensive and high-tech and custom, you have to have people you have a team. There's 5 of us who manage one beamline. And we all have PhDs and all have had significant research experience. So, does that answer your question, do you think?
So I guess if I can, it does. It's actually given me a thought here. So something that you've mentioned, pure chemistry, you love all of that. When you start working in somewhere like ANSTO, you're no longer just a chemist, but you have to do things like maintenance of systems and equipment.
Oh yes, definitely. there's very few research positions as an experimental scientist. So I'd put that in. I would classify myself as a physical chemist. I do a lot of physics. It's having a good understanding of physics or a working understanding of physics is very helpful when you do a broad range of chemistry. So yeah, having those practical hands-on skills is also really important if you're going to be an experimental chemist or an experimental physical chemist.
The other thing that I take from what you were just saying is there's a lot of collaboration, a lot of people relying on you.
Yeah, definitely, and especially at the Australian synchrotron. But that is quite different to, or it can be different to working in a university. It depends on how universities are a lot more variable. So in my group, there was about 5 of us at Griffith University. So, you know, if I broke something, it probably wouldn't even impact anyone else. You know, or if something wasn't working and I didn't fix it, it wouldn't matter. Obviously, the Australian synchrotron is a multi-million-dollar government facility. If I don't fix something, it matters a lot.
Absolutely.
So yes, there's more of an investment from the organization in managing my instruments at the Australian synchrotron than there is at universities and in academia, because yeah.
We'll definitely call that a work pressure.
Sorry?
I'll say we definitely call that a work pressure.
Yes, just a bit.
Christina, thank you so much. I'm going to just jump back to David there. David, you still with us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. Now, Dave, yes, I certainly can. David, you've been in the industry quite a while, I'm gathering. So you've got a great perspective as to what it might look like for somebody new into the industry, somebody building their career, and somebody who's maybe in the last stages of their career. What is the biggest bit of advice you might be able to give to our viewers when they're just starting in the industry?
To the industry, yeah, I worked 2 years after my postdoc as a QA manager in the industry. Now, in the industry, particularly in the private industry, everything is driven by the profit. So if you can make contribution to any type of the thing that can contribute to that, and that would be very, very good for your career in a way. Yeah, I remember, for example, as a quality manager, so quality control, working with the production manager and also general manager to get the quality product out. That's the daily goal, you know. Now, to complete that, to accomplish that, then your technical skills and also your people management skill is very important. How do you get the people come along and contribute to the goal? Now, for manager, but for the staff, the same thing. The technical, at that time, I remember I managed 6 QC staff member, quality control. So they have contribute to very expertise. Some are very good in HPLC, some are in IR, some in the UVs, NMR, these sort of things, and also other microbiome testing, etc. So in industry too, you need, particularly in manufacturing of the pharmaceutical industry, you need all kinds of the expertise. So as a graduate, you have a very good foundation, knowledge, and you start in, so you probably don't pick any type of job. I recommend any type of job would be useful if you learn new skills, definitely. Now, the pay also is probably at the beginning not that critical. Yeah, if you consider that, because you need to learn skill first, you accumulate as much skill and learn as much as possible, and your career advance will come along and your pay will increase, I'm sure. Yeah, so if you are keen on industry, try also get some more knowledge. If you particularly some industry, try to learn to investigate those industries, get a good understanding. So that's again is your knowledge, and I'm sure if you use it from at some time in your career, so the time spent on studying a particular industry that you're interested in is worthwhile. And of course, if you know that industry need particular skills, then you probably, and you are lacking on that, then you probably, through some volunteer work to get a skill, or through the studying, a short course studying to get a skill. So that can help you to get a job. And once you get in, anytime job, I recommend you would do it, and do it at your best capacity, and do it excellently. I'm sure it might be so boring in the beginning, or even so simple, but soon after you learn it, and then you will, and you demonstrate your capability, you will move to a better job, a higher job. It give you more responsibilities and make you more valuable to the company. Yeah, and also your pay will come. I hope that answer sort of, yeah, that's quite a long time ago in industry. Nowadays, the industry is much bigger and more segregated in a way. Yeah. So I'm not sure that once you get in, well, that's good in a way, I think, because once you get in, just like the public service too, once you get in, you can move around to other sections. As long as it's good, as long as you demonstrate your value to the company or to the industry. Yeah, that's the main thing. Yeah.
So David, what I'm hearing from you is that you need to be enthusiastic and motivated and give everything you possibly can.
Yes, yeah. Do your best, whatever, at any time, yeah, to the job.
But your expectations of a fantastic salary will be met over time, but certainly not up front.
Yep, that's right. Well, you hard work first and then reward later, in general.
Exactly. David, I've actually got a question for you. This is from one of our participants. And the question is Six Sigma certification significant today in the industry while applying for QA and QC positions?
I heard of it, but I'm not so familiar with the Six Sigma. I left industry for quite a long time now. I'm afraid I probably cannot answer the question in a way. I mean, it relates to quality control, right? How tight in it? Is that right? I mean, somebody else might be able to answer. I mean, well, you should know. Sorry, you might help me to answer. You are in the industry. Well, yeah.
From my point of view, I've certainly heard of Six Sigma, and I just as a sort of passing thing, and I gather it is a quality assurance program, I suppose, but certainly not a requirement for where I am, at least.
Yeah, might be in the biotechnology drug area, proteins, microbiome. There's a much more high expectation or highly regulated. Yeah, that might be applicable. Well, so 20, 30 years ago, I also haven't used this for my quality control, and I haven't catch up the new development. Obviously, it's not very relevant to my current work. Yeah, it's
so David, I guess our answer is it's not that critical in that case.
Yeah.
Dead right. Well, thank you for that, David. I'm going to ask Nicole something. Nicole, I know you've been sitting in the background there waiting for a question, and I'm warming up my thoughts as to what to ask you. But again, I suppose from your point of view, you've spoken to us about your personal interaction with people whilst you're a pharmacist, and you've spoken about when you're doing clinical trials, interacting with people. You've spoken a lot about those interactions. It seems as though that's very important to you. What else is important? Is remuneration top of your list, or what else?
That's a very good question, Andrew. most important for myself was to be able to return to Queensland. I did my PhD in Melbourne and knew that there was more academic and industry positions in Melbourne. And when I came to Queensland, a recruiter actually told me to go back. So that was very difficult, but very important for myself was to be Brisbane based or the ability to work remotely. I actually am very motivated by money, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I have a couple of mortgages under my belt. I need to pay bills. So that's why I'm constantly pursuing higher positions, but it does come at a cost. I work very hard in the job I'm at now, very long hours, that if I potentially equate per hour salary, I would be lower than what I've earned before. But I'm still building efficiency in my role. I'm only about 4 months in, but I do hope it doesn't continuously be very long days. But now that I am in a very broad job title such as project management, I can see my LinkedIn is now flooded with recruiters because it can be applied across multiple fields or industries. So I do like the fact that I have that career progression. Unlike pharmacy, I felt once I was a pharmacist, I was always a pharmacist. Now I have that career progression, but also the ability to move sideways.
So you've actually got a whole lot of new skills as well as just being a pharmacist, as you say.
Yes. So being a pharmacist, you do feel that empathy and the ability to build rapport quickly with a patient. Now I don't have patients, I have clients that are paying the company $10 million to run a clinical trial. But I still need to have that ability to be professional and concise and meet their expectations on delivery. And that they are skills that I learned in my PhD. For example, in lab-based meetings where you had to be put on the spot to give updates on your project, or you had to work collaboratively and make sure that timelines and milestones were met. These are all skills that you don't think you do anticipate that you'll need them after your PhD, but you don't fully appreciate them when you're in your PhD.
Okay, that's very good. Thank you. Now, something I'm just thinking about, you clearly remuneration is important to you and your people skills are important to you. It's really refreshing for somebody to admit to that. We honestly do have mortgages to pay for, and we've got, I don't know, whatever hobbies and stuff we have interest in, families that require funds that need to be funded over time. But I guess that's also patience. As David 100%. Said, you can't get paid the top dollar the very first job you get into.
I absolutely agree. When I was in unemployment, the first role I took was in that assistant position, working as a clinical trial coordinator, but I was titled as a casual assistant because that's the only contract I had on offer. And I was getting the pay equivalent to someone that's just got a high school degree. But I was building my experience, and without that experience, I wouldn't have allowed me to then get the next job at Icon Cancer Centre. And it's all a stepping stone. And, you know, it's a lot easier to find a job when you have a job. So when a recruiter approached me about a project management role at Nucleus Network, I felt, okay, I can present myself for this job, but I don't need to panic if I am not successful because I'm already in a job. And I would only take the role if it was a step in the right direction.
That's excellent. That's good to hear. I suppose, would that be called your parachute?
Yes, yeah.
Now, you are in clinical trials. You do clinical trials. What part of that do you see growing? I guess what sector is growing, what interest is growing? Where's the big growth area?
So I might take a moment to elaborate on the clinical trial sector. So if you're curious, you can either be on the site side where you're patient facing and you're a clinical research coordinator, and then you go into project management, or you can be on the contract research organisation side or the pharmaceutical side where you're a clinical research associate. So if you don't feel like you have the patient interaction skills, there's either or. I like to think my job is recession proof. Just in the last year alone, with the COVID vaccine coming from UQ. My company has been responsible for testing that, as well as the Novavax vaccine. And we are continuously growing every day. It is a very secure job. Both positions I've had have been permanent, which, unlike in academia, I found there was a heavy reliance on grant funding. I have security in my job, which I value, and I can't see the industry slowing down anytime soon.
That is brilliant to hear. Very well done for picking that industry and for working so hard to getting there.
Thanks.
Christina, I have got a question from one of our attendees tonight, and they're very interested about research life. And the question is, I'm just wondering, what is the life of a typical researcher? What would it be? What do researchers do specifically?
So it depends on the area of research you're in. And that depends largely on how long it takes to do experiments. So if you're doing clinical trial experiments or medical experiments, you might spend 6 months straight every day doing experimental work. And then you would do maybe a couple of months of write-up, and then you would publish a couple of papers. It also changes throughout your career. When you're a postdoc, like your first postdoc, I would expect that you would be doing 4 out of 5 days of experimental work, and maybe 1 day of writing, or maybe 3 days of experimental work, 2 days of writing. When you're a professor, you basically do no experimental work. You spend all of your time supervising students or supervising experiments, and writing grant applications. It also depends a bit on whether you go into a university track or you go into a research organization track. So CSIRO and ANSTO, and most other research organizations that are purely research actually operate very similar to universities without the teaching. So at CSIRO, at ANSTO, at other research organizations around the world, like other synchrotrons, other neutron facilities, where they're scientific facilities, your career progression is dependent on your publication rate. And that's the same as in academia. If you want to progress, if you want to get grants, your publication rate is as in how many papers you produce per year, and particularly in comparison to other researchers in your area, is a significant part of how you are judged and how you progress in the area. And that will affect whether you get grants, that will affect whether you get internal research grants, internal funding, that will affect whether you get a tenure track position, that will affect whether you get permanent positions or temporary positions in other research organizations. So the kind of day-to-day life, so that's the big picture. But the day-to-day life, it kind of depends on which research area you're in and how you want to run your research. So I'm quite a friendly person. I like to talk to other people. I like to see other people. That was one of the reasons why I went to the Australian Synchrotron, is because I get to work in a group of 5 people. That's just my group, and there's other people in other offices that I can go and talk to and collaborate with. And that's one thing that's important to me, is actually seeing people and talking to them and directly collaborating. But if you like research, but you don't like talking to people that much, then you can do like computational chemistry. And then you sit in your room and program all day. And then you can write papers and publish. So it depends on exactly which area of research you're in, depends on what your day looks like. But in terms of what your time division is, it kind of varies. Early career, about 70% doing things as an experimentally doing things, doing the research, 30% writing what the research was and publishing it and going to conferences and stuff. when you're later in your postdoc or a bit later, it progresses to from 70% research to 0% research or 1% research, and you get more and more administration load. Yeah, how does that sound?
That sounds absolutely great. Something I'd like to add to that. You're absolutely right in the day-to-day work of what you're doing. And you've also mentioned going to conferences and publications. Something that I found super important is the networking that you do at conferences, at any presentations that you give. It's something that's well worth taking note of. Any opportunity that you've got to actually meet other people, other students, other professors, other collaborators, absolutely makes a huge, big difference. Have you found this has helped your career at all?
Directly meeting new people at conferences, no. Not for me personally. My path has been a bit weird in that way. There's plenty of people who say that they have had really good experiences at conferences and met someone at a conference. I think if I was going to stick my flag in anything, so to speak, it's really important to pick the right supervisor and the right mentor for yourself, because the fact that Roland Marco was my PhD supervisor in particular areas in research opens doors for me, because he was the right person. And at the Australian Synchrotron, I go around and they go, oh yeah, where did you do your PhD? Oh, I did it at this random university, the University of the Sunshine Coast. Oh, okay, who was your supervisor? Roland DeMarco. And they go, oh, okay, that's great. And that's the important thing. You either want a supervisor who is well known in whichever area you're going in, or you want a supervisor who is going to take you with them to conferences and introduce you to people who they know, and who is going to write you a really good recommendation letter when you finish your PhD and say, oh yeah, this person is great. They should definitely do this job. And I know, and the person reading that recommendation letter goes, oh, I know they're going to have all these skills because I know that lab at that university has all of the facilities that we have or has similar facilities, and they can walk in here and start doing research. Because as Nicole said, most of the time, postdoc positions are 1 year, 2 years. You don't have time to spend 6 months figuring out what you can do and what you can't do. You walk in and you start doing things. And you have to, otherwise you lose too much time and you lose publication time and you don't get experiments done. And then you don't publish and then you're behind, and then you'll get kicked out of academia instead of leaving academia.
Quite a pressure pot, but that's super advice. Get the right professor behind you, get somebody to advocate, be your advocate.
Yeah, and don't believe the professor when they tell you everything is good. When you go, pro tip, if you want to do a PhD at a university, meet the advisor and then go and talk to their older PhD students or their postdocs and ask them what they really like and what the lab's really like, and look at the outcomes of the other PhD graduates. And if those PhD graduates don't have postdoc positions, or they had to wait 6 months to get a postdoc position, or they dropped out completely, then worry a lot.
If you can, I'll add to that, if you can actually visit their labs and chat to the PhD students.
That's true. Although LinkedIn is very helpful because you should be able to find people. And even if you can't, most people in academia are much more approachable than they seem. And just contact them and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing a PhD in your group. I'd like to know a bit about it. What's it like? Most people will be pretty happy to tell you. But also take it with a grain of salt.
Christina, thank you for that. We've actually had a couple more questions from you from the participants. I've got the question I've got here is, how did you cope with the learning curve of going from uni-based research to your current position? For example, were you always doing a lot of physics?
So yes, I like physics. It's one of my favorite subjects. When I was in my PhD, I taught third year physics. So the short answer is yes. If you don't like physics, it would be very difficult to be an instrument scientist, because essentially you're taking advantage of physics some way to do some kind of experiment or to build some kind of instrument. It is a pretty steep learning curve, and there are still things that I need to learn. Like I definitely need to refresh my calculus. I've looked at things and just been like, I know I did this like 7 years ago and I have no idea what it means now. But it's one of those things that it's like, if you pick, and this is why picking something that you enjoy is really important, because if you feel that the physics is too much of a chore for the benefit of the work you're doing or the enjoyment you get out of the work you're doing, it won't be worth it. You won't be very good at it. You'll really struggle. You'll be sad most of the time. You'll feel like everybody else is better at it than you are. And then you won't do well, and you will have lost an opportunity to actually do something you really enjoy. That doesn't mean if you don't like physics, you can't be an instrument scientist or a physical chemist. There's still lots of room for more chemistry focused chemists. Like in my group, there's a chemist she's a biological chemist, and she doesn't really know much about physics, so that's fine. Yeah, was that all there was to that question? I think coping with it. Yeah, you just honestly, you kind of have to like it. You have to like it enough to put up with when it's really hard.
Tough it out. Yeah.
And I have a really good, happy relationship. I have, I do other things to keep myself happy, including, keeping my health and, maintaining friendships and stuff like that. So, keeping the other things going when things are tough is really important too. Life is not all about work.
Christina, that's fantastic advice. Life is not all about work. Thank you.
Andrew.
Nicole, I'm going to give you the opportunity ever so briefly. We just got a couple of minutes left, just to give some final advice if there's anything you'd like to say to everyone.
Oh, way to put me on the spot.
Absolutely.
I do encourage everyone to explore your options and just reach out through LinkedIn to people in a field that you may be interested in and offer yourself for work experience. And like David said, your first job may not be your dream job. I highly expect it won't be, but you are still bound to learn skills that will be valuable further down the track. So even if it's just a year, it shows that you can adapt to a new environment, you can learn new skills, you can work collaboratively in a new team. So even if you find that job is not for you and you don't want to pursue that career path, it's not a waste of time. Just like me, I don't use chemistry anymore whatsoever, but I do not find that my PhD was a waste of time, nor do I regret it. It has given me confidence to hold my head high and tell people that I have the ability to learn, and that I'm willing to learn, and that I'm smart and I'm confident I can do the job. Then I just have to follow through with it.
Excellent, and I'm sure you will. Nicole, thank you. David, any last words?
I might go back to what Christine Lam research experience, and they added that you don't need to be a top researcher. You can be a research assistant, even a research technician, and you can still learn a lot of soft skills, which is very important, which is transferable to any kind of job, like communication, project management, building, teamwork, these sort of things in the industry, highly regarded, and same in the APS, in the public service, that's like the APVMA, very much important and highly regarded. And through that, soft skills, and that's where your selling point, and to secure the job too. So, and this particularly important when you just graduate, well, the bachelor degree, and you don't have much actual working experience. And selling your soft skills is very important. And soft skill can come from anywhere. I mentioned about APMA very active in the social community. So through that activity, you work on the project, organize events, and you're dealing with people. These sort of things very important to build your confidence, as Nicole said, your confidence, in your job, in your presentation, in your communications. So a research skill position, even though it's low, you learn through that soft skills, and then they get transferable to the industry and then to the public service.
Soft skills, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely right there, David. Look, tonight has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you to David, to Nicole, to Christina, and to RACI's organizational committee. I've loved hearing what you guys have had to say, and I think you've had some fantastic insights that you've been able to share. So a very big thank you to everyone. And also thank you to all the attendees for the questions and for making this a great night. So tonight has been another event as part of the RACI Careers Development Program through webinars, networking events, mentoring, and so on. The RACI Career Development Program aims to help graduating students get the absolute best start in their careers. And I think that our panelists tonight have done just that. They've given some really great insights there. So just to let you know, the other things that will be coming up, there's the second in our Exploring Career Options series. This is Thursday, 22 April. And this is in conjunction with AIFST on food science and technology. Also, Thursday, 29 April, the Victoria ECCG are running a webinar on mental health in the workspace. And of course, there's Camaraderie, which is the next session happening on the 6th of May at 6:30 Sydney time. Just to let everybody know, the recording of this event will be uploaded to the RACI Careers Development YouTube channel over the next couple of days, as well as the careers site. So if you want to go back and re-look at what's been happening, great way of doing that. Again, I just want to say a very, very big thank you, David, Christina, Nicole. Thanks for taking the time to be here tonight, and also to our sponsors, DCS Technical, Envirolab, Laboratory Credit Union. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much.